I appreciate you guys being here. I know time and attention are our most valuable assets, and I appreciate you spending yours here with me. I hope to over-deliver on what it is I teach you guys today, and hopefully we can work together to kind of change the industry and where everything's headed. So I'm titling my presentation today, Move Better, Play Better. These are the 3 secrets for transforming your business and the lives of those around you. And that's really what we're all about as golf professionals. Is it working? There it goes. All right, so before we get into it, show of hands, who here wants to help more people, make more money, have more free time, and live a fulfilled life? Everybody, right? I mean, that's why we do it. That's why we're golf pros, is so that we can do all that, especially the second one, right? Notoriously, golf pros, we don't necessarily have that passive income stream. That's going to be something that we talk about today, is how to stop trading time for money. So I do hope that you guys get a lot of value out of what we're talking about today. Oh no! So what is this? This is the reaction that you guys are going to have when our industry changes if you're not prepared for it. But luckily, you're here, you're going to be prepared for it. I have some great insight into what's coming and how you guys need to be ready for it. It's going to be awesome. I'm really excited for the wave that's coming, and we're really going to change the world through this game of golf. So as a thank you for coming today, I'm going to talk about 3 secrets that you guys all need to know. The first one is a 3-step formula proven to increase club head speed in any player at any age. The second one is a 12-minute warm-up routine proven to lower scores without even having to touch a club. And then lastly, we're going to talk about the proven strategy used by top performers to stop trading time for money. Which it sounds like that's what we all want. So before we get into it, as PGA members, we have an opportunity and using our platform to kind of reach a lot of people. This game is global. You don't need to speak a certain language to play it. You can play it from cradle to the grave anywhere in the world. It's a really fantastic sport, and so our obligation as the professionals and the thought leaders and the experts of this game is to use that platform to help empower others to reach their greatest potential. And I think based on what we've said already, a lot of you, that's why you became a professional in the first place, is to help out so many people. So that's what we're going to talk about, is how to use that platform for good. So who am I? Who's this guy that's up here, and why are you guys here today? Well, my name is Blaine Seitz. I'm a performance coach out of Portland, Oregon, and I've been playing this game my whole life. That's a picture of me coming home from the hospital, by the way. It says Golf Pro right on the polo there. Coincidence? Yes, but I think it's funny nonetheless. So I played my whole life, fell in love with the game at a very early age. And when I was in my mid-teens, I was fortunate to work with a really great instructor. I don't know if anybody here knows Derek Cooper. Last year when I gave a similar presentation, there were a few people that knew Derek. So if you know him, go ahead and give him a shout out. But Derek was awesome. Throughout my high school career, he brought my game from the low hundreds to the low 70s, got me ready for college golf, got me ready for the PGM program, but most importantly, he showed me that you could make a living being a golf professional. I was like, that's so cool. I didn't really want to go down that traditional route of getting a desk job or this, that, and the other. I'm sure some of you have a similar notion of all that. So I was like, cool. Well, let's learn how to teach golf. But there's a big problem. I could play golf. I couldn't teach golf. So I enrolled at the PGM program at Coastal Carolina University, which was a fantastic program, golf everywhere, so that was great to get my experience. And what happened was, I was on one of my internships, this was back in 2011, and I had some nagging back pain that started up in high school, and it kind of just stayed with me, and I was under the impression that, you know, back pain, golf, they go together, and some of you might feel that way as well, and it's just like, hey, well, let's just pop a couple ibuprofen, let's go out there, let's suck it up, that's what golf is, let's just work through it. Well, I was on one of my internships where one of the assistant professionals I was working with had recently gotten into CrossFit. And if anybody here knows anybody in the CrossFit world, all they do is talk about CrossFit. So that's what we did, is we talked about CrossFit. And one day, we were in the pro shop, it was a little bit slow in the tee sheets, and he's like, hey, Blaine, come into the back here, I gotta show you something. I'm like, okay. So we go in the back, he's like, do you ever work out? Do you go to the gym? And I was like, you know, I've played sports my whole life, but I don't necessarily go to the gym. I have this back pain, and I don't really like flaring it up. Usually when I exercise or lift weights, it just gets worse. And he's like, try this. And he shows me this stretch, this exercise, this stretch called a couch stretch, and I didn't really know what we were doing, but I'm down there against this wall, I'm stretching out what I now know are my hip flexors, and it kind of hurts a little bit. I didn't really quite know what was going on, but after about 2 minutes, he was like, all right, that's enough. Go ahead and stand up. So I stand up, and as soon as I do, my pelvis tucks underneath, all my back pain's gone. I'm like, oh my God, what is this? What is this voodoo magic? I just had some back pain and now it's gone. Well, that was my aha moment. And I found out that, wait a second, we don't necessarily have to work with what they got, if that makes sense. And we have an opportunity to change the way a person moves through different exercises and training. So I started going down a deep rabbit hole, and I'm still going on that rabbit hole today. Became a certified CrossFit instructor, mobility specialist. I got my Class A PGA. I'm a TPI certified professional, US Kids Golf, all sorts of wonderful stuff. Just a bunch of letters after my name, just basically saying that I know what I'm talking about, I guess. But all of this is going through that same notion that we're talking about of I want to just help as many people as possible, and I found that getting different certifications helps me to do that. So what I did after the internship is I moved back home and I ended up joining a gym. And it was about 5-6 months into being a member at this gym that the head coach found out. She's like, hey, Blaine, I heard you're a golf pro? I'm like, yeah. She's like, well, I bet you if you can teach golfers how to swing a club, you could probably teach them how to move a barbell and how to exercise and, you know, all this stuff that goes along with it. And I was like, that'd be awesome, but I have one catch. I'd love to do it, but I'll do it under one condition. I was like, CrossFit has this reputation of hurting people, and I think I can resolve that. I think I have a solution for people hurting themselves. I think I can get people to move better. I'd love to come on as a coach, but I need 5 to 10 minutes at the beginning of every session to take people through some targeted mobility to get them ready for the exercises and workouts that we were going to be doing. So this turned into group mobility classes, and sure enough, everybody in the gym started lifting heavier weights. They got hurt less often. Their times were coming down in their workouts, and it was fantastic. So what I started to do was I'd invite my golfers into the gym to come to these mobility programs. And sure enough, for like the next few days after they came to one of the programs, they were hitting the ball farther, they had more energy after the round, and they just overall had this feeling of well-being, and they're like, wait a second, what's going on here? I feel so good. And this residual effect started to get my brain going. It's like, wait a second, I'm onto something here, right? There's a direct correlation between being able to move better and being able to play better. And these are just a few photos, befores and afters, and everything that I've done throughout the years. So I did this for almost 5 years, and about 2 years ago, I decided, let's move out to Portland, Oregon, the city I always wanted to live in, and let's just coach golf full-time using these methodologies that I've developed both in the golf world and in the fitness world, and that's where I created Mobilitas Golf. Mobilitas, Latin for mobility, which basically means that you're ready to move at any time, that general preparedness. You know, as a human, we were meant years ago, you just kind of wake up and you go hunt and you forage and you climb and you throw, and it's all this movement that's built into us, and we kind of lose that. And whether it's sitting behind a desk or traveling or this, that, and the other, our bodies just don't move the way that they do anymore, and it changes the way that we're able to swing. So I was able to develop a methodology, what I call the Mobilitas method, and that's now the primary engine behind my performance center, Ace Golf, out in Hillsborough, and we've partnered up with our local country club, Rock Creek Country Club, and we now offer a lot of different programs for all age groups that focus on better movement and long-term development, both in juniors, adults, seniors, everybody. So I started doing all this, and the PGA got word of what I was doing and how I was taking an approach to using movement and mobility and fitness as a means of instruction. And I was really fortunate. They liked what I was doing, invited me to come out and speak a couple of times. I was here last year at the Orlando show this January, talked at a couple local shows, and here I am again this year, and I think we have Orlando lined up for next January as well, which is awesome. So as a thank you for all of this, I want to share my 3 secrets with you guys, because like we said at the beginning of the presentation, our industry is changing, and I want you to be on the forefront of where it's going and be ready for that change as it's coming. So let's start with our first secret, the 3-step formula, proven to increase club speed in any player at any age. Sounds too good to be true, right? But we've been able to prove it. Before I give you the secret though, let me ask you guys this. Which one of these is correct? All of them. Awesome. You guys are a little brighter than last year. We had all. So when I started off as a golf coach, I was under the impression that somebody like right here in the middle in this yellow shirt, that's usually the most common answer I get. It's like, Well, that's what it is. All the books that I read, all the magazines that I flip through, the instructional videos, this, that, and the other, they're all talking about these perfect positions and different systems and all that stuff. And it turns out that when I was coaching golfers, some of them would get better, some of them wouldn't, some of them would get better quickly, and some would get better really slowly. And I had to start taking a look under the hood as to why that was the case. And as it sounds like all of you know, there is no one way to do this. There's no one way to swing a golf club. There's no one way to play golf. There's no one way to do anything. So we have to look at the underlying principles behind why every one of these works and why each one of these guys up here is making millions of dollars a year on tour with a swing that's totally different. So this right here is my methodology in a nutshell. And we're going to come back to this slide a few times throughout the presentation. It's really simple when you look at it. It's a pyramid. It's a hierarchy. We need to have a good foundation before we can build up. Now, what I found was the traditional model of teaching golf lives up here in this transition phase. We talk about path and face and attack angle and all these things that help change the way that the ball flies through the air. The question that I started to ask, though, is why is the club there in the first place? Is it because we have tight hips? Is it because we have bad shoulders? Do we have a bad back? Whatever the case is, if we're missing this foundation, we're going to be lacking. So this methodology applies to any rotary sport. I just put it in golf terms because I'm a golf pro. But the first thing we want to do is we need to get into position. We need to have the mobility for our joints to be able to move, for our back to stay flat, and then we need to be able to stabilize that position so we're not moving around too much. And we need to have proprioception or body awareness to know where we are in space and time, align ourselves to the shot, and go ahead and swing. Well, once we have that foundation laid, the next thing is, can we create rotary strength? Can we actually create a strength and a stretch as we start to rotate? And a lot of players, even if they do go to the gym, don't necessarily train rotary strength. They'll do things like I used to do in the CrossFit world, which is moving in kind of two planes of dimension. We're going forward, we're going side to side, but golf, we need to add a rotary component. And that was one of the big things in the fitness world that I saw was missing. I was like, we don't have any way of training all of this, so let's start implementing it with our golfers. And this is also where coordination comes in, hand-eye coordination, everything like that. And then finally, when we get up to the transition phase, if we've done our homework and we've laid a good foundation, position and rotation, the transition starts to take care of itself. And so the players that get better the quickest are the ones that already have a good foundation. All right, who's this guy? We all know this guy, right? Mr. Haverkamp. If you guys haven't seen Caddyshack in a while, go rewatch it. It's always a good kick. So, years ago, when I was first starting my teaching career, if I saw Mr. Haverkamp and Mr. Haverkamp came over and said, Blaine, I'd like a golf lesson. Oh boy, what are we going to do with Mr. Haverkamp? Right? Nothing against Mr. Haverkamp, great guy, but I think we all know, just looking at him like, okay, we have our work cut out for us. At least that's the way I used to think. Now if I look at Mr. Haverkamp, I say, wow, there's all this untapped potential. This guy has nowhere to go but up so long as he's willing to do the work. I think I can help him out. So why is it that Mr. Haverkamp is so difficult? Well, here's the mobility spectrum. And so if we take players and we put them into one of four buckets, we want everybody to be mobile. We need that foundation of mobility. That's to be able to move well and have good movement syntax or context. Now, when players are too strong and lack flexibility, they become stiff and rigid. If they have too much flexibility and not enough strength, they're hypermobile. Or in the case of Mr. Haverkamp, he doesn't have strength or flexibility, therefore he's immobile. And we want to do everything that we can to get people out of the immobile stage and moving towards the mobile stage. And the more mobile we are, the easier we tend to pick things up. And that's where, if you ever have somebody that they're just naturally athletic, right? They probably have a good foundation of mobility. They probably played sports growing up. They have good body awareness. So I want to go through a couple quick case studies. This is my good friend, Henry Morgan. Henry and I have been working together for almost 3 years. And when I first started working with Henry, he came to me really frustrated with his game. He loved golf. He was getting ready to retire in a few years, but he couldn't hit the ball, and everybody that he went to see for golf lessons couldn't seem to fix him. So he came to me, he's like, Blaine, you're my last hope. He's like, I don't want to put any pressure on you, but if I can't get this figured out, I think I'm going to quit the game. And as we all as professionals know, we don't want anybody to quit this game. We want to keep them playing. So I told Henry, I was like, look, we have our work cut out for us, but if you're willing to do what I ask you to and put in that effort, I know you're going to get better. So if anybody is TPI certified, show of hands, is anybody TPI certified? We've got a couple, cool. So you'll know what all this is up here. If you don't, that's okay. Red's bad, green's good. So when we looked at Henry, we took him through a mobility screen, we saw almost everything was red. His body was just not moving. He had good hands though. That was his key. And we were like, all right, Henry, we're going to learn how to use your hands. And then with my Mobilitas screen, he had a 5 out of 15, which will make some more sense towards the end here. Club head speed with his driver was just around 53 miles an hour, and he could get about 78 yards with his driver. Henry was down here. Very strong, hard-working guy, but he had no flexibility. He was very rigid. So when we got together, we're like, okay, out of everything we need to work on, let's start at the very bottom. You need mobility. You need body awareness. You're starting to get older. You can't move the way that you used to. So let's see what Henry used to look like. This is almost 3 years ago. That's about all we had to work with. Very limited, right? And the thing was, he kept trying to make his swing longer. His feet would come up, and he'd just snap hook everything. So the first thing we did, I was like, Henry, we got to at least keep your feet on the ground and teach you how to turn your body, and we'll go from there. So what did we do? Well, I started Henry on my power warm-up routine, which you guys will learn about here in a little bit, and he started doing that every single day religiously. In the morning, you wake up, do the power warm-up. Even if you've done it in the morning and you go out to practice or play, do it again before you practice or play. And it's a great priming sequence to get your body to remember to move well. Then I got him on a 1-week mobility program targeting his hips and thoracic spine. Those were his biggest areas that really needed improvement. And once he got through that 1 week, we transitioned him onto a 1-month program to touch on a few extra things. And Henry was coming for lessons every week. And we did that for almost 2 years. He's now coming about once a month. We'll get to that in a second as to why. It's not because the instruction was bad. It's good stuff, I promise. But now, big difference. Henry's mobility has really improved. One of the biggest things, though, his driver club head speed has picked up almost 30 miles an hour, and he can now proudly get it over 200 yards, which is huge. So let's see, this was about a week ago with a gap wedge. Big change. He's hitting his gap wedge farther than he was hitting his driver 3 years ago. I want to watch that one more time. Henry makes me really, really proud. He's put in the hard work. That's his wife in the background. They come in for some fitness classes together. So what's happened, and this was so cool, is going back to the beginning, when I met Henry, he was ready to quit the game, and he was like, I'm just going to keep working, right? Well, once we got him moving better, he decided to retire early, buy an RV, and now he travels around the country with his wife, playing golf and hanging out with the grandkids and seeing family. So he's been able to take the mobility that we've talked about in the context of golf and improve his life outside of the game, which is really cool. I'm really proud of both of them. Now here's Lance. Lance is another client of mine that I've been working with for almost 3 years now, but he has a completely different story. When I first met Lance, his mobility was pretty on point. These that we see over here are really the trickiest ones. They take a lot of time. They're almost gone now, but all things considered, he was pretty green in terms of his mobility. He didn't really have any problems. He had a 15 out of 15 on my mobility screen. He could swing 102 miles an hour, but he was only getting 220 yards. So there was something not going into the ball. He wasn't able to convert on all of that. Lance lived up here in the hypermobile world. He was very mobile, but he didn't have the strength. So I was like, okay, you already have the mobility, you have decent proprioception, really, really good hand-eye coordination. And so let's start tackling these rotary centers and building your coordination as it relates to rotary power. So this was Lance almost 3 years ago. Big, wide stance, pretty decent swing, all things considered, but it just wasn't going into the ball. He was relying heavily on this flip of the hands right at the bottom and hoping he timed it right. Sometimes he would, sometimes he wouldn't, but it didn't always go in. So even if he was using his legs or his core, it didn't necessarily translate. So what we did with Lance is we also started him on the power warm-up routine. It's the first thing I do with every client every time, and you guys are going to learn that in a little bit. But then I got him on a 1-month power program, targeting his legs and his core, and then onto a 6-week speed program, and now he's on an overall monthly performance plan, where every month I write him a new program, and we kind of cycle through a few things depending on his goals, and he still comes in every other week, and we've even gotten his son involved, and you guys will get to see his son in a little bit. But now, Lance has almost nothing holding him back from a mobility perspective. We've picked up about 10 miles an hour on his driver, and he's picked up almost 50 yards because of it. So now he's learning how to use his body a little bit more appropriately. So this is an example of some of the training that I do with Lance, and it doesn't look like golf. So this is over at ACE, our performance center just outside Portland, Oregon, and this is one of the obstacle courses that I love setting up. So what he's doing, he's holding an Indian club, and on top of that is a paper cup with a golf ball in it. So that golf ball moves around, and he's got to try to keep it balanced while navigating different obstacles. And you might be thinking, well, that looks nothing like golf. But the reality is golf is a game of proprioception. The more aware we are of our body and the better that we can move our body, we'll play better golf. Most of the people that we run into, they already know how to play better golf. We just have to get them out of their own way. So we saw that when we take care of the position, a lot of cool things happen, and when we take care of the rotation, more strength starts to come in. But what about the transition phase? And before we go into the next piece, I do want to thank, real quick, Super Speed Golf. They let me borrow one of their clubs, so I can't go on without giving them a little plug here. But if anybody's seen these Super Speed Golf clubs, the #1 question I get asked is, do they work? And the answer is absolutely. So thank you, Super Speed Golf. Appreciate it. Now, this is Will. This is Lance's son. He's 8 years old. And we are just kind of getting him into it. And I'm going to start it over real quick, because I want everybody to see how when he starts off, he's got it, and then he starts thinking, and he slows down, and he's like really having to work through all this. And I try to give him different drills to really get his cognition going, and we're trying to critically think through these athletic movements. And so now he's like, oh man, which one? But he ultimately figures it out. We get him punching stuff, we get him throwing stuff. He's right-handed, I'm making him throw things left-handed. Right? All these things that our juniors are starting to lose. You know, it used to be that you wake up in the morning, you go to school, you come home, you play with your friends in the neighborhood, you just figured it out. But our kids aren't doing that anymore, and we're losing that ability to become athletic. And for us adults, we spent so many years behind a desk that we don't remember who we are and how to move anymore. So regardless of the age, it works. Here's Henry again with his wife. This is a fantastic exercise right here. They're both planking, and I have colored rings on the ground. They have to hold the plank, and when I call out the color, they need to move to that color. So now they're having to think through, they're having to piece things together.
Knee stays behind the toes,
lunges, some different athletic training,
we get our
all sorts of really cool stuff.
Keep that left arm straight.
We use 3D sensors. This is Mark here. He's wearing a K vest so that we can make sure that when he is doing his training that his spine positions are in the right shape. We don't want that to ever lose it. This is one of the local high school golf teams I was training.
All right, 10 burpees.
Getting them in the gym, teaching them how to do some basic
2,
movements.
1, and time. Relax.
Hang on. 3, 2, 1, and go. Good. We definitely don't want to give up that rest time.
Good, 10 punches.
Back to the rings on the ground. This is one of my favorites. You're going to see Noel here struggle a little bit, but in a good way.
Red, blue, red, blue, red, yellow, blue, yellow, red, slam ball.
Right? Now he has to think through it. It's not
Good,
just
all the
about
way
moving,
tall
it's
overhead.
about tying all of these pieces
Yes,
together.
there's a good slam. 3, 2 more.
Anybody can do slam balls. Can you do slam balls in context of something else?
Hold it, throw
Throwing, again, left-handed. We do right-handed.
Hold
we do
it,
it from standing.
hold
We
it,
do it from kneeling,
throw it.
half kneeling, single leg stuff. I think there's one more. So at the end of the day, when we follow this hierarchy,
Keep going,
we
even
have
more,
people
even
build
more
their
out to
mobility
the
and
right.
stability. Now it makes swinging a club easier.
Keep holding it. I know it's done, but
People are
keep
able
holding
to
it.
get into the
Gotta
positions
fight
that,
for that
we
position.
want them to. Not because it's the best
Keep holding.
position for the swing, but it's the best position for them in the way that their body moves. So that's our three-step formula. If we go from position to rotation to transition, everything starts to fall into place. And as long as you follow that hierarchy with whatever training that you're doing, you're going to see the most success out of your golfer. So let's move on to secret number 2, which is the 12-minute warm-up proven to lower scores without even having to touch a club. Sounds too good to be true yet again, but I promise it's not. So this methodology in the larger context is how do we develop programs? How do we get players from where they are, like Henry and Lance, to where we want them to go? Cool. We follow the position, we give them more mobility, stability, proprioception, build rotary strength and coordination, and then we work on power street training and sport-specific movements. But the beauty of it is we follow this same hierarchy each individual day. What do I mean by that? Well, in the case of like Henry and I, we had to spend almost a year working just in the position phase before we moved on. But let's say you already have good mobility, you already have decent strength and coordination, such as our juniors. Our juniors come into us with really good mobility, and they're not quite old enough to add strength, so we just focus on stability, proprioception, coordination, and then obviously the sports-centric movements. So the warm-up routine that we use at ACE hits on all 3 of these areas. Our first phase hits the position with mobility and proprioception. I call it the power warm-up. We'll talk about that in a minute. And then we move on to the power band warm-up, and all of you have a power band now, so you're going to be able to do this as well, and that activates our rotary power centers. And then finally we do a speed warm-up so that our brain and our body are firing on all cylinders, they're communicating very clearly, and that gets us awake and alert and aware, which is why sometimes we get on the golf course and it takes like 5, 6, 7 holes just to kind of get going, because we got to build that connection. So why not have it going before we even get out there? So let me ask you guys this. If we were to race these 2 cars, which one's going to win? I know what you're all thinking. You're like, the green one, right? It depends. On the outside, maybe. But what's going on inside? I'm sure we have all seen players with a beautiful swing that can't break 100. And then you probably know somebody who just slaps it all over the place and shoots around par. Right? Because what's on the outside doesn't necessarily determine what's on the inside. We want to make sure that we have a good chassis. We need to make sure that we have a good suspension and a good engine, all the components that go into it. Because if we took this green car and we took all of the fancy stuff on the inside away and put it into this old black car, the black car is going to win. Right? What's going to win, a Ferrari with no brakes or a bicycle? So our power warm-up takes about 6 minutes, and it hits on all the major mobile joints of the body, which are our ankles, our hips, thoracic spine, cervical spine, or our neck, shoulders, and wrists. And when we get those loosened up and moving, all of a sudden, our body will bend and fold the way that it's designed to based on our biomechanics. Now, I use a technique called power stretching. It's something I've developed over the years, and don't be too intimidated by the definition down here. Dynamic end range isometric contractions. Big fancy way of saying, put your body into a position it's restricted, and then squeeze your muscles. Right? If we have a shoulder problem, if you take your arm and you bring it across your chest and that's as far as it goes, go ahead and pull it a little farther, and then try to push your arm away from you. Hold it for a few seconds, now your shoulder's range of motion has been improved. It's that simple. This is why yoga's been around for over 2,000 years, because it works. You put yourself into a restricted position, you reach, you stretch, you push, you breathe. All of a sudden you start to change. So power stretching is the foundation for everything in the power warm-up. And again, it takes about 6 minutes. You guys will get to see it in a second, and I'm going to be giving you a whole bunch of free stuff at the end here. Afterwards, we get into the power band warm-up, and everybody here now has a power band. And the power band is to help us with what's called deceleration training. Show of hands, has anybody heard about deceleration training before? Not many. Okay. You all now know. This is so important, deceleration training. So let's think of this. Going back to our car analogy, right? What good is a Ferrari with no brakes? Doesn't do us any good. It looks good, but it's not functional. Deceleration training is like slapping a giant pair of brakes on your golf swing. And when you have a good braking system, you can accelerate, and you can accelerate fast, and you can drive the car because your body knows that you can stop. Oh, I went too far. So deceleration training is basically where your muscles contract as they get longer, if that makes sense. So think of like, we're doing a pull-up, right? My chin's over the bar. Well, if I lower myself, my muscles are squeezing as they get longer. That's essentially deceleration training. And if we think about it from the perspective of the golf swing, what happens in our transition phase when we go from the top of the backswing to the downswing? What happens? Our body is stretching out as it starts to contract. And if we don't have good deceleration, we can't do that efficiently. Which is why a lot of new protocols are coming out, including these super speed guys, say, look, let's swing lefty in addition to swinging righty. Because when we train the accelerators on the other side of the body, that's like training the brakes on our dominant side. And all of a sudden, our club head speed starts to go up. And then lastly, once our body is loose and primed, then we go into our speed warm-up, and this is very neurological. This is how fast can we move? Can we have good coordination? And this is just dynamic concentric movements. Concentric meaning our muscles contract as they get shorter. This is what we traditionally think of when we think of weightlifting, like picking something up. And so this is just doing it all at speed. And when we do that, now we have a car that's ready to go. It's primed up, the engines are warm, the tires are sticky. 3, 2, 1, go, you're ready to perform. So what does it look like? Hang in with the chitnut voice here. So this is our power warm-up. This is one of our group practices over at Rock Creek. Takes about 6 minutes or so to get through all of it.
As you're pressing very slowly, turn your hands so the blades of your hands are together, then the backs of your hands, then the blades, then the palms. Flip your hands backwards and bottom, feel a little tug in the front of your chest. We're going to do about 15 of these. And touch your toes, come up, reach for the sky. That's 1, let's do 6 of these. Back down and up. 2, push your elbow up, lean to the left. If your right arm is up, lean to the left. You have a big stretch down your right side. Everybody, big breath. Every way I'm twisting, that leg is straight.
And don't worry, I have content for you guys that doesn't sound like this.
Hand on back. We're going to do about 15 to 20 of these. I want you to tuck your hips like you're trying to take your belt buckle and plug it up into your belly button. Big stretch in the front of the hip. You guys feel that? Now we drop down and we twist into that leg. I want you to push that foot down through the ground. And it's going to fire up your leg. Now you guys are young and flexible. If you can, take your foot and do a windshield wiper while pushing it. Palms up.
Nice. Now we're going into the power band warm-up with our power bands. I have all of our students carry one in their golf bag. If they don't, they get in trouble. So they always have one with them. No excuses.
Really, really important. We're going to go all the way back, all the way forward. If you can't keep your arms straight, you started too narrow. So start as wide as you need to so your arms won't bend. So let's pull it up and over our shoulders. Just let your arms sit right on your shoulders. Into a squat, everybody. Into a squat. Big step to the right. Step with your left foot back.
It's great.
Big step left, right foot left, left foot.
And now we're going into our speed warm-up. And we had some golf bags in the way, so I condensed the speed warm-up portion of it. But all the movements that we listed a second ago are in there. Now this is a little bit above and beyond. Something that we do right before we go out and play is we'll do a shoulder warm-up from the National Pitchers Association, developed by Dr. Tom House. It's fantastic. So we have all the kids go through that before game days. And then I like to teach all the kids how to meditate and breathe, which is really important before we go out on the golf course of, hey, let's just remember who we are, where we are, what we're doing, why we're doing it. So that whole thing there, when you include the extras, takes about 15 to 20 minutes. If you just do the 3 that we talked about here in the presentation, it's about 12. And all of our kids do that every single time. And we have the adults starting to do it as well. We might need to modify depending on where they are on that mobility spectrum. If we have somebody who has a serious lack of flexibility, we don't necessarily go into a lot of the power band stuff because we don't want to strengthen things that don't move the right way. I hope that makes sense. Lastly, I want to talk about the proven strategy used by top performers to stop trading time for money. And I think this is a big one that we all need to understand. And this is the biggest thing that's going to be changing with our industry in the next few years. And that's how we develop and push out content. So here's the big question. All of us here as golf professionals want to grow our facilities, we want to grow our coaching businesses, we want to get more clients, we want to make more money. We might have the best facility, we might have all the technology and all the equipment, but what if nobody knows who you are? Right now we're limited to just who's in our immediate surroundings. And I think what's happening with our industry is geographical borders are starting to go away. And we're not going to be limited by them anymore. And this is really, really important to understand. Something scary to think about, but we have to think about it. I know, 9/11, not the best image, but here's what we got to think about. Next month, as of September 11th, 2019, there will no longer be any junior golfers under the age of 18 who were born before 9/11. Whoa, right? And then going into next year, there's not going to be any teenagers left. So all of these juniors that are coming up through our programs, the ones that are going to eventually take over our facilities and be our main source of income, they're digesting content in a completely different way than our typical demographic and psychographic is now. And what's happening with these juniors is they're not necessarily willing to go to a facility and say, hey, here's $100, teach me for an hour, I hope I like what I get. It's not how they're being raised. We're now growing up in a time and an age where people want to digest content first for free, make sure they like it, know it works, then they'll come pay you for it. And if we don't flip that on its head, we're going to be behind. And that's why I'm so glad that you're all here so that you get a head start on all this, because it's happening right now. We just have to be ready for it. So this is what we're doing at ACE. And ACE is the home of speed. We have everybody come through with the goal of we're going to get faster. And we get faster either by improving their mobility so that they don't get hurt, or we improve their rotary power and conditioning, or we improve the efficiency of their swing using the Mobilitas method that we were talking about earlier. Now, what we've done at ACE is pretty special. We've taken the tour model of kind of having a pit crew on our team, swing coach, a personal trainer, a doctor of psychology, right? All these things that the professionals are using. They have a whole team and a whole network. And for a long time, the average golfer didn't have access to that. So like, yeah, well, I want tour level coaching, but where do I get it? And so what we've done at ACE is we've brought on a team where everybody has their own specialization or their own niche, but it's all for the greater good of our academy with the goal of getting people faster. So up here is myself, the Director of Performance. I oversee everything that we do from the fitness and performance and mobility standpoint, but we also have a mental performance coach, a doctor of psychology on our team. We have a mini tour player who's also a fitness specialist, and he helps coach a lot of our players. We have a certified athletic trainer if we have anybody that needs to come in and do some manual body work. And then we have a director of golf who oversees all of our golf instruction and programs. So as a team, we're able to offer that same kind of instruction that all the pros are getting. Now, what we've done outside of this, and this is where I think it's really cool, and this is where we as facilities and professionals have to be really smart about how we make our next steps, is each one of us has our own content online to help attract new customers and bring attention to who we are and what it is we're doing. And I want to share with you guys what I'm doing, because I'm building out my team to do the same thing, and I want you guys to be an extension of my team and have you doing this same thing. So again, trading time for money. None of us like to do it, so why not get out of that cycle? So what I've done, I wrote a book recently. It took me about 14 months of my life, and you guys actually get a copy of it today, so I'm really excited for that. All I need is your email before you leave. We'll get all of that, but I have a bunch of free stuff here for you. But if you guys were to go to book.mobilitasathletics.com, this is where it would take you. And like we were saying a minute ago, this new generation, they want things for free, and they want to try it before they buy it. And when you build that trust with them, then they'll come pay you, which is a completely different model. So this is my landing page. It gives you a little enticing hook for why you should get my new book. It's completely free. All you got to do is put in your email. And you might be thinking, well, Blaine, why don't you charge for your book? It took 14 months of your life. That was a brutal process, wasn't it? Yeah, but I'm not doing it for the money. I'm doing it to get that information out there. Then what happens? You give me your email, you get a copy of that book, but hey, I want you to get the most out of your book. So I'm going to offer you a one-week program. At the end of my book is a 7-day Intro to Golf Mobility program, and you could just read the book and go through it yourself. Or here's an option. Here's my sales page, what it all looks like. But if you sign up for this program, you join my private Facebook group. Every Monday we start the challenge, and it's 7 days. We log on, I give a little live presentation. Hey, here's what you're going to be doing for the day. This is what you should be thinking about. This is your goals. Then you go into the video library, you follow along with all the exercises, stretches, and drills, and then you get to interact with your community on Facebook. Hey, this is what I was running into. This is, oh, okay, cool, shared experience, right? It's really awesome. And then the next week we start a new program. And then for those who are really into it, I'll coach you privately. And that's a nice little upsell. Now, I only take 10 private clients at a time, so I limit that number of space, but if anybody goes through my one-week program and they're like, hey, Blaine, this was awesome. I'm moving better, I'm feeling better, I'm playing better, I want more, cool. I'll coach you remotely. We'll get on the phone, we'll do a little video message, we'll do a goal-setting consultation, I'll write you a customized program, I'll check in with you a couple times a month and make sure you're staying on track. Because those geographical borders are gone, guys. Don't think of it as I need to work within just my local demographic. The world's your oyster, so long as you have something that you can push to them. And then lastly over here, it's really hard to see, but this is the members page on my website here. So depending on what you get, you just log on, you have access to all of it. So you can download the book, you can watch some videos, all the videos and instruction for the 7-day program are on there, and all the links to download my training app for the private coaching is on there as well. So what this has done is, again, taken away the geographical borders and said, look, I have a program that I can push out there regardless of where you guys are. So in conclusion, if we were to summarize this all up, the first thing, going back to our first secret, is we need to get to the root of the issue, guys. No more throwing Band-Aids on the swing, right? Because they don't hold up. A Band-Aid's going to fall off under pressure. But if we get to the root of it, why are you doing what you're doing? Then we can start to fix it. In the case of Henry, he needed mobility. In the case of Lance, he needed rotary power. In the case of our juniors, they need a little bit of everything, and everybody's somewhere on that spectrum. Next up, proper preparation primes power and promises performance. Whew, a lot of P's. Basically saying when we warm up the right way, our body is going to be more able to perform, and it's going to perform at a higher level because we've taken that time to teach it what we want it to do before we do it. And the way we do it isn't by necessarily just swinging the club, it's by getting all those underlying principles running and going. And then lastly, we need to provide more value for free than most people charge for. We need to act as a team, getting our facilities on the same page and all of our professionals within that facility contributing to the whole. And we need to transform our facilities into educational authorities. And that's the big change that's coming. It's no longer this is the place where you come to play golf alone. This is the place where you come to learn about yourself and how to move and how to be a better person. And we as professionals are just part of the team that helps out with that. So I know it probably feels like this. We talked about it a lot, like you guys just drank from a fire hose. So I know it was a lot. So I wanted to give you guys free stuff. And that way you can leave and you're like, okay, I went to Vegas, I got some really cool stuff. The first one's my book. I want everybody to go through it and read it. I wrote it mostly from the perspective of coaches, which is really great because, you know, I'm a PGA professional. I want to help out other PGA professionals. But it's also applicable to students if you want to give it out to anybody that you work with. I also want to sign everybody up for the online training program, that 1-week challenge. So anybody that gives me their email, I'll give you a link to get onboarded into that. Monday morning comes around, cool, let's go online. You get a video from me on Facebook. You get to download all the videos and train. And then after a week, you're like, oh my God, okay, cool. I went through this 1-week program. I'm moving better, I'm feeling better, and now I know how to communicate that to my clients. You guys already got your power band so that you can do your power warm-up. And for anybody who's here today, I want to get on the phone with you guys for like 20, 30 minutes, just see where you guys are at, and if there's anything I can do to help you out, to kind of help you figure out what's your golden nugget, what's your ticket to stop trading time for money, what makes you special, what makes your facility special, I'd love to help you out with that. Talk about building funnels and marketing and copy and all that stuff that goes into the back end of doing marketing ourselves as professionals. Now, real quick before I move on, because we are almost at the end here, but in the book, you guys will see the power warm-up routine, you'll see the 7-day program, you'll see everything in there. So if you haven't taken pictures, if you haven't written it all down, no worries, it's in there, and I'll just grab your email before we go at the end. So I appreciate you guys being here. Definitely go check everything out. I'm on social media at Mobilitas Golf. My main platform's Instagram, but I'm also on Facebook and YouTube. I put out content all the time. I have a newsletter. And I'd love for you guys to go on to book.mobilitasathletics.com. Just check it out. Start stealing ideas. What's Blaine doing? How can I copy him? Right? Because this is the way that our industry is moving. And I want you guys to all be prepared for it. So that all being said, I appreciate you guys being here. I'm going to be hanging out for a little bit today. If you guys have any questions, if you want to pick my brain, that's what I'm here for. How are we doing on time, by the way? I don't even have a watch or anything. 8:15. Okay, that's about 45 minutes. That's perfect then. We'll give about 15 minutes for Q&A if anybody has any questions. Otherwise, thank you so much for coming out. Enjoy your time in Vegas.